Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're doing something a little bit different. I think it's pretty fascinating, actually.
Yeah, what have we got?
We've basically immersed ourselves in this YouTube English language learning session.
Okay.
Imagine being like a fly on the wall while this really advanced speaker talks with their instructor.
Right, so we're eavesdropping, essentially, for insights.
Kind of. Our mission, let's say, is...
And what's interesting here isn't just the English level itself, though that's part of it. It's how the speaker expresses things, the ideas they share,
Wow.
and also the feedback from the instructor. It gives us this interesting lens on communication more broadly, not just language learning.
Totally. Okay, so let's dig in. Starting with, well, the daily grind, the routine.
Right.
The speaker described their typical weekday as, and I quote, very average mundane.
Huh. I think a lot of us can relate to that feeling.
Definitely. Waking up around 8, the usual morning bits and pieces, driving to work,
Yeah.
dinner, then Netflix. Sounds familiar.
Very. But what really stood out for me was the contrast with the weekends.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, it was like a complete switch. Suddenly, there's this, dedicated time for personal things.
Like what?
Things like meditation, writing, and
Yeah.
not just journaling. They mentioned wanting to write novels eventually.
Wow, ambitious.
Yeah. And yoga, too. Oh, and they even mentioned wanting to try horse riding.
Horse riding. Okay, that's a bit different.
It really shows that that need we have to carve out space for ourselves, doesn't it? When the weekday pressure cooker lets up a bit.
It really does. It makes you think about, how our society kind of sets up this stark work-life divide.
And the speaker did touch on that big life change going from school to work.
Right.
But interestingly, they felt they actually have more free time on weekends now as an adult.
That's unexpected, maybe. A different perspective.
It is. Makes you think about your own journey, right? How has your routine changed over the years? And what really, truly fills your cup when you get that free time?
Good question. Okay, so from routines, let's shift to something less structured. Dreams.
Ah, the world of dreams. Always fascinating.
The speaker said they dream sometimes, but not, like, super often. And they rarely remember them clearly.
That sounds pretty common, too.
Yeah, but they did acknowledge that dreams might have potential. Like maybe they reveal things we've pushed down, repressed emotions or stress.
Sort of like messages from our subconscious. That lines up with some psychological ideas, that our brains are processing things while we sleep.
But here's where it got really interesting for me. Predicting the future.
Oh. Did they think dreams could do that?
Well, they said they were on the fence about it, undecided.
Yeah.
But they also said the idea seems credible.
Wow. So even now, that sort of ancient idea about dreams maybe showing us the future,
Yeah,
it still holds some appeal.
it seems so. Have you ever had a dream like that, one that just stuck with you, felt significant somehow?
Maybe not predicting the future, but definitely ones that felt revealing. Okay, let's switch gears again. Something more concrete. Email.
Ah, yes. Digital communication, specifically work emails.
Right. The speaker mentioned getting emails mainly from, managers, other departments, the usual stuff.
Follow-ups, meeting requests, reminders.
Exactly. But their approach to handling them was quite deliberate.
Yeah, I noted that too. They prefer to actually do the task first.
Before replying.
Yeah. Their reasoning was no point in replying if the work hasn't been done.
That's a very action-first mindset, results-oriented.
It is.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder about that versus, the pressure lots of us feel to just reply instantly to show we've seen it.
Definitely a different way of managing workflow. And what about other emails? Like ads?
Oh, generally unwelcome, unless it's maybe a sale notification or from a brand they actually follow.
Sounds familiar. That constant battle for our attention in the inbox. How do you handle yours? Are you an instant responder or more task-focused like the speaker?
That's something to ponder. Okay, let's talk exercise. Or maybe the lack of it sometimes.
Huh. Yes, the speaker admitted they don't exercise as much as they'd like.
And they found the gym, what was the phrase? Tedious and boring.
Ouch. But probably relatable for quite a few people, I'd guess. Why do you think that is? That gyms can feel that way?
Well, maybe the repetition. Sometimes it just feels like a chore, doesn't it? The speaker seemed to lean that way.
Yeah, and they mentioned preferring classes, but then there's the whole hassle of getting there and back, the commute.
Right, the logistics.
So there was more inclination towards slower stuff like yoga, swimming.
And they joked about wanting to avoid breaking a sweat.
Which they admitted was not very realistic, thankfully. But it shows a preference for maybe movement that feels good rather than just hardcore exercise.
Pilates got to mention, too, for toning.
Mm-hmm.
But what really caught my ear was the observation about how exercise trends might have changed since they were a kid.
Oh, like how?
They contrasted things like cycling and tennis with, wait for it, dancing on TikTok.
Seriously? Dancing on TikTok as exercise.
Well, as a significant shift in how people, maybe younger people, engage with physical activity, it's a snapshot of culture and tech influencing this stuff.
That's actually a really interesting observation. It makes you think about your own life. What kinds of movement do you actually enjoy and stick with?
Yeah, what makes it sustainable for you?
Right.
Okay, moving on from exercise to connection. Friends.
Ah, yes. This part was lovely. The speaker talked about a recent trip back to Taiwan, 3 weeks.
And big focus was visiting friends.
Exactly. And they used this beautiful phrase because they don't have much biological family there. They called their friends the family that you've chosen.
Oh, I love that. The family you've chosen. It really highlights how important those bonds can be.
Absolutely vital. And they mentioned specific friends, names like Shirley, Tiffany, Cyril, Eva. Some friendships going way back, like since they were 15 or 18.
Wow, long-term connections. And what did they do when they met up?
Mostly just hung out, talked a lot.
Simple as that.
Yeah, catching up on life, relationships, happiness, worries, often just over wine or tea. It's a reminder, isn't it? That real connection often happens in their simple moments of just being present.
It really is. No fancy activities needed.
Although there were some highlights mentioned too. Visiting Cyril's new restaurant, which was doing well.
That's great. Celebrating successes.
Yeah, and attending a friend named Jackie's wedding, with apparently a bit too much whiskey involved.
Huh? Sounds like a proper celebration then.
And they mentioned how lovely it was to see Tiffany and Eva and meet their new babies too, just sharing those big life moments.
It really paints a picture of rich, meaningful friendships. Makes you reflect on your own chosen family, doesn't it? Who are those people for you?
Definitely. Okay, so from chosen family to, well, biological family and cultural traditions.
Right. The speaker talked about celebrations in their culture,
Yeah.
presumably Taiwanese, given the trip.
Chinese New Year and the Mid-Autumn Festival were mentioned as big family gathering times.
Important occasions.
Very. But there was also this really honest admission that while any excuse for the family to get together is kind of valued, it can also be a bit stressful at times.
The complexities of family dynamic.
Exactly. I think that's pretty universal, regardless of the culture, right? Family gatherings can be wonderful and tricky.
Definitely. Did they say why it could be stressful?
Yeah, things like intrusive questions, about marriage, kids, life choices, stuff that can feel pressured, especially if you've had to travel a long way to be there.
Yeah, the third degree. That resonates. That tension between expectation and your own path.
But on a more positive note, some really strong values came through about family life.
Like what?
Helping kids with homework was seen as a very good thing, important for their mental health.
Hey, that parental support aspect.
And eating dinner together as a family, that was described as very, very, very important.
Wow, strong emphasis there.
Yeah, for connection, for communication, just that daily ritual.
Simple but powerful.
And finally, chores. The belief that everyone in the family should pitch in.
Makes sense. Shared responsibility.
Yeah, but with nuance, considering different work schedules, aiming to distribute work evenly. A very pragmatic view of keeping things harmonious at home.
So how do those views on family, the celebrations, the support, the chores, how do they sit with your own experiences? Does any of that sound familiar?
It's interesting to compare. Now, shifting focus slightly. Remember, the original source was a language learning session.
Right, with instructor feedback.
Exactly. And while that feedback was aimed at English improvement, we can actually pull out some really valuable implicit insights about just good communication, generally.
Oh, I like that angle. What kind of things?
Well, the instructor stressed going deep on 1 or 2 points rather than wide, by just listing lots of things.
Depth over breadth.
Precisely. It shows a better command of the ideas and the language, obviously, but it's good advice for any discussion, isn't it? Develop your points properly.
Yeah, instead of just skimming the surface, makes the conversation richer. What else?
Considering alternative viewpoints when you develop your answer.
Okay, so not just stating your piece, but showing you've thought about other angles.
Yeah, it leads to more comprehensive understanding, more nuanced discussion. It's really about critical thinking as much as language.
That makes a lot of sense. And pronunciation. Was that mentioned?
Oh, definitely. Clear pronunciation is crucial, regardless of your accent. And things like intonation.
The music of the voice.
Sort of, yeah. The
Yeah,
rise and fall and sentence stress, which words you emphasize, those things massively affect how your meaning comes across.
totally. You can say the same words and mean completely different things just by changing the emphasis.
Absolutely. And then there's fluency, speaking smoothly without too many long pauses while you search for words or fix grammar.
Keeps the conversation flowing.
And coherence, basically. Answering the question and making sure your answer is logically developed and easy to follow.
Right, sticking to the point and building on it,
Finally, the instructor mentions strong grammar, not just being correct, but using a good range of structures and having a wide, precise vocabulary.
including idioms.
Yeah, idiomatic expressions add that sort of naturalness and color. But fundamentally, all these things, grammar, vocab, fluency, coherence, pronunciation, they're not just language test criteria. They're the tools we all use for clear, effective, compelling communication.
It really makes you think about how consciously you use those tools in your own interactions, doesn't it?
It does. So, wrapping things up, bringing it all together, what are the key takeaways here?
Well, for me, it's how this peek into a language session actually opened up all these universal themes, routines, dreams, connection, communication challenges.
Yeah, the everyday human experience, really, seen through this specific lens.
And the instructor's feedback gives us these great pointers on what makes communication work well: depth, considering other views, clarity.
It's all interconnected. The way we structure our thoughts influences how clearly we can express them, and vice versa.
So maybe a final thought for you listening.
Yeah.
Think about that balance, or maybe the tension between routine and spontaneity in your own life.
The predictable versus the unexpected.
Exactly. And maybe consider, what if you approached even the mundane bits of your day with a bit more mindfulness, or paid closer attention to the unspoken stuff in your relationships?
Could that lead to, like, surprising insights?
Maybe. Surprising insights. Perhaps a richer understanding of yourself, and maybe of others too, just something to mull over.